So, in the last episode, I unfortunately overheated the E46. I immediately noticed it because I always kept an eye on the coolant temps because I was fairly nervous. So I immediately stopped. The car overheated for around 30 seconds, 40 seconds-ish. I wasn't full throttling because I was driving on the highway at 100 kph, so 60 miles per hour. And I was kind of slow, and as soon as I saw that the temperatures climbed, I went to neutral, and as soon as I left the highway, which was like 50 meters after I noticed it overheating, I immediately stopped and called the breakdown assistance. Yesterday, I did a compression test immediately after the engine cooled down, and these are the results. So with 11.5 bars all around, that seems really good actually, and would not be indicative of a cracked head or blown head gasket, which are usually the first things to happen when you overheat an alu block and alu head. So, is the car still fine? We're gonna find out. Now, I'm just gonna take out the air intake and the radiator shroud, then part of the cooling system that we need to replace, and then we'll investigate if the engine still runs okay, or if we have a blown head gasket, cracked head, or warped head and block, because these engines are really prone to deforming the head and block as soon as they slightly overheat. I really hope it is still fine. No coolant in the lines at the top. Also no coolant at the bottom. Not good. Everybody always complains about these coolant hoses with the clips. I don't see why. They're really easy to take off. Just use a bit of prying and leverage with a screwdriver and you can take them out without damaging anything. It's really relatively easy. So the stupid drain screw won't come out of the expansion tank, so I'm just gonna remove the pipes and then let it drain out from there, because yeah, it won't cooperate. I've removed the first hose. Now I gotta take out the lower hose as well, and this cable goes to a sensor for the coolant level, which is attached at the bottom of the reservoir. Of course, the sensor is completely stuck on there. Finally it came loose. The weird thing is, this sensor triggers a light in the cockpit for low water level or low coolant level. This never came on. Even now, it is not on. So we'll probably have to order the sensor new because it is definitely broken. That would have probably prevented all of this from happening, since then I would have gotten a reading of, oh, your coolant level's too low, and then I would have instantly stopped and not even had the car overheat. So that's pretty stupid. Got the clip loose at the bottom with the help of a tiny screwdriver. I'm gonna remove that hose too. It's probably gonna leave a bigger splash. Also, the coolant in there is mostly water, so it has no blue color at all. It doesn't pick up too well on the camera because of the green bucket, but in reality I can assure you this is over 90% water. Not good. Oh, I managed to get it out. Now we can easily take out the radiator. While I'm already a bit deeper into the engine bay, I'm just gonna clean some of the oil residues that will prevent me from working cleanly on the engine in the future. So just gonna go over it with a towel and so on. Here we have the new radiator. Yeah, it is from the same make as the old one, but just like the old one, it is made in the EU, so it should actually be fine. I don't like these plastic end tanks, so I'll probably swap to an upgraded radiator in the future. Now I just need to transfer this piece to the new one, and then we should be able to drop it back in. Before I'm gonna install the expansion tank, I'm gonna put one of the coolant lines back on since I have easier access like this. There is a clip that you need to push back in on the other side, like so. Now the second hose right here, and the sensor that apparently doesn't work. And now just the two radiator hoses and the shroud. Now I'm going to push the car partially outside so that the front of the car sits higher than the rear. That way air bubbles can escape the system easier, and then we're going to have less issues bleeding the whole system. I've started the engine. No white smoke, which would be indicative of a cracked head or blown head gasket, so I guess there we are safe. At the same time, I'm going to check if I need to redo the level, because I have no idea if there was still water in the block or not. The coolant pipes are already getting kind of hot, so I think the system is working as it should, and there's no leaks on the system, so fingers crossed the engine is fine. It's bleeding off pressure, so it's okay, I guess. As you can see, the car is approaching full operating temperature. I think it's fine, there's no white smoke at the rear. The car has now reached operating temperature. Unfortunately, I do see water exiting the tailpipes, but since it's not steamy, I think it's just condensation because the car sat for so long and has only been shut on, shut off for really short periods of time. It's been at operating temperature for over 5 minutes now, and it doesn't move, so I guess it works. I'm gonna go as far and say that my quick thinking saved the engine, because I immediately noticed it and I immediately concluded that I needed to stop, and I didn't try and force it, so I shut it off relatively quick, and that's why I think it is still fine. We can finally start with the CCV removal. And it is not a tricky procedure, it's just there's not a lot of space to do the CCV on E46s. On E39s it's a lot easier because you have more room on the sides. We'll also need to take out the throttle body and all the other stuff, because the CCV was sitting differently than I had it in mind, I just realized. So it's gonna take a bit longer, but gonna do it no matter what. Now I'm gonna undo the reservoir holder for the hydraulic steering, and that allows me to have extra space at the front and eliminates a bit of gas work. As you can see, this allows you to put the reservoir relatively far on the side, and then you have extra space right here, because you'll have to undo the evap system, and then you can reach under to install the new tubes. Unfortunately, we also need to undo the electrical box, which prevents access to the throttle body and to the CCV system, and therefore we need to move the dipstick out of the way. There's a size 13 down there, and then we can just swivel it around, because I don't feel like taking it out and creating a huge mess. Also, I unfortunately forgot to order a dipstick gasket and a new throttle body gasket, but the throttle body gaskets are pretty much always fine, they are really flexible. Also, the reason why we're doing this whole CCV system is because that's one of the most common, if not the most common, air leak on these engines, and these also fail and do not separate the oil and water vapors correctly, etc, etc. There's just a lot that can go wrong, and this usually causes the engine to run rough, which we have the case, so we're just going to do that and hopefully fix many things along the way. Now we can remove the size 12 for the oil dipstick. Now I can bend it out of the way. And then we have access to the electrical box. Now the throttle body, which is held in by 4 10mm. Yes, finally. The interior part of the throttle body is relatively darkened out and disgusting, so we'll clean it with throttle body cleaner. Also, this gasket is just what I was trying to say. It's still really thick and protrudes the surface by about 1 millimeter, so there's really no need to change these most of the time. So I hope you're going to be able to see this, but there is the actual CCV. And yeah, it's difficult to remove it because I'm really limited with space. On the E46 it's difficult, and I have to film all this stuff. So yeah, it's kind of tricky, as you can imagine. There's two screws, one at the top left and one at the bottom right, both difficult to get to. So yeah, now I'll have to get under here and remove the two Torx bolts holding it in to the intake manifold. Now we're going to remove all the CCV lines. These are all just plastic connectors and relatively hard to get off, so for the old ones I recommend just breaking them or cutting them with screwdrivers and pliers. There's a line that goes from here to here. Here's a line that goes down to the separator. Here's a line that goes down to the separator. And then there's just one line at the bottom. This one and the bottom one is the trickiest because here you have no space, and at the other one down there that goes back to the oil drain, there you also have no space. Oh, this one wasn't even attached. It was just loose. It was just... No wonder this car ran like shit. Also, I think this was replaced somewhat recently because the seals are still thick and the lines are still flexible. So yeah, definitely because of an installation issue. This one wasn't attached and there was a huge air leak, so no wonder the car ran like shit. This one also wasn't installed properly. Another thing I also just noticed is, you see this kink? Usually it's supposed to be 90 degrees. Well, why is that? Because whatever tool worked on this installed it backwards. So yeah, no wonder there were so many air leaks. This one wasn't connected. If this one is mounted inverse, it cannot be really attached correctly at the bottom. The rear wasn't attached correctly, so the CCV system was definitely leaking a ton of air. Now we just need to go down all the way and detach the one going to the oil dipstick return. Now we've already loosened everything and we should just be able to take it out. Also, a thing I just noticed, the Vanos line is installed incorrectly and there is a kink. It's supposed to be installed the other way around. So yeah, a bunch of pretty incompetent people have worked on this car so far, which I don't like, to be fully honest. I really don't. Now I'm just gonna pull the CCV out. This was cut or damaged already. I don't know if that was me or during the installation by the previous master mechanic, but yeah, I'm glad we got that out. Now we just need to take off this block-off plate from the old CCV system and put it on a new one. This is for the fuel pressure regulator on M52TUs. On M54s it's blank since the fuel pressure regulator sits at the filter in a different location. Before putting the new CCV in, I'm going to attach the drain tube at the bottom, and I'm going to use silicone lubricant on every one of the O-rings to not damage them during installation. Now that the drain tube is attached, I'm going to snorkel it under the black tube and put it in place. I have hooked up the return pipe and the CCV. Unfortunately, I noticed that one of the previous installers of this system literally broke the threads in the intake manifold since they're only out of plastic. It's plastic screw, just screw it tight, make it firm, and then you stop. There's not going to be any huge resistance before you destroy the threads. How incompetent can you be? Now I just have to install the rest, and that's going to be a bit easier to film, but unfortunately equally as hard to install. Yesterday the engine ran fine, but now it revs up and down and it runs like shit. Also, we got many more error codes. So mixture to ridge. Now we also got faults for throttle position. So I'll just give it not good. Something is definitely going wrong right now. This is a bit unusual. What you just saw on video was just some weird error. This car just have a mind on their own, and I just charged the battery because it was only reading, I don't know, it was 11.3 volts or something, so the battery is dead. Or it's just because it wasn't charged because the car is not being driven. So I just charged it a bit for like 1 hour, and then the error codes just went away and the car ran normally. So I have no clue what that was. But a thing I also want to address in this video is there is a huge misfire. Like, you can't accelerate normally because it is in some kind of a limp mode despite there being no check engine light. When you rev the car and you sit in it, you feel it misfiring in the seat. It's really bad, and like really I can't imagine the previous owner driving like this, because you have to be an absolute like mentally challenged individual to drive a car like this, because it just feels bad. And I don't think the previous owner was that sort of guy. So I have a few theories, because this car has 237,000 kilometers, which is a lot. And on my old E46 I bought it with 220k, and after I changed the fuel filter, it ran a lot better, it had more power, and it revved better. So maybe the fuel filter is clogged because it's still the original one, and on the M54 versions the fuel pressure regulator sits at the bottom on the fuel filter, and on my old one, the M52 TU version, it sits on the fuel rail. So I have a new fuel filter, and maybe it's a faulty pressure regulator. Maybe the pressure is no longer good, because these are supposed to have 3.5 bars of fuel pressure. Unfortunately, I don't have a tester, so I can't verify that. I can just change it and hope that it makes it better. But with 240k on the clock, I think that's definitely going to do a big difference. But before we're going to do that, I want to do a bit of diagnostics with my favorite tool, INPA. Since I can feel and hear the misfire, there's definitely something in there, even if it throws no check engine light. I have activated INPA and put the ignition on. Now we're gonna go to engine. We have MS43 ECU. Versions don't match, okay. And I think it was under read status, so F5 and then F7 rough. And now we can see which cylinders run rough. So yeah, I'm gonna start the engine and then we can see from which cylinder the misfire comes, because it should show right there. As far as I understand misfires, it's just that the amount of work that was performed by the engine doesn't match with what the computer calculated, so it cuts fuel and or ignition. We definitely have to fix that. There's many causes for that. I'm also going to read the error memory, since the rough function apparently doesn't think there's a misfire. So maybe our issue is caused by not enough fuel pressure. Also going to read the memory. Lambda errors because there's apparently too lean. Too lean can also be caused by not enough fuel pressure. And then sometimes there's another lean code. Sometimes we have burning fail, misfire, cylinder number 6. Lambda control for rich on bank 2 and 1. Misfire cylinder 5. So we do have misfires on cylinders 5 and 6. I have an idea, we can check something. Since we already changed the spark plugs, I would usually say that they are good. But maybe the courier dropped the package. Some of the spark plugs were actually damaged. So I'm just going to swap in 2 of the old ones on the affecting cylinders. Then we're going to erase the memories, rev it again, check again. And if it stays on the same cylinders, we're going to swap coil packs 5 and 6 with 1 and 2. And if then the code moves to cylinder 1 and 2, we know that 2 coil packs are on the way out. It's usually relatively rare, but coil packs can go bad without throwing a check engine light. So voiceover me is here. I just wanted to explain that I switched coil packs to cylinder 2 and 1 from cylinder 5 and 6. I've changed to 6 brand new spark plugs from NGK. I've ran the old spark plugs, I've ran the new spark plugs in combination with the old, and I've checked everything. Unfortunately that led me nowhere, but in the next video I'm gonna explain my theory, what I think happened. So yeah, there's a lot to be discussed in the next episode.